Good morning. My name is Keith Moore, CEO of KDM and Associates, and founder of Open Government TV, and happen to be the operator of the nation's only MBDA Federal Procurement Center. And I'm here with Deputy Undersecretary Eric Morrissette, the only agency focused on small, emerging, and minority-owned businesses, and happy to be here with you today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, my friend.
It is truly my delight this morning to be here in Atlanta, Georgia, with the Deputy Undersecretary and all of the other MBEs, MBDA staff, and NMSDC in partnership, redefining norms.
That's right.
Right? In this business. We're gonna have a little fun because it's long overdue that we've really sat down. I'm gonna be coming to you from MBDA federal procurement perspective.
Perfect.
Maybe a little bit of past, present, and future with some of my questions.
I love it.
And so I have to go and let you know that it was our ribbon cutting at the Federal Procurement Center in the DC office at the rooftop the night that the bipartisan infrastructure bill was signed.
Wow.
Is that incredible?
It's incredible.
And the MBDA staff, they hadn't seen each other because of COVID in 2 years, except for online.
Wow.
So that was a little bit of the background. And so I'd like to ask you, Deputy Undersecretary, how does it feel to be in this position, knowing that it really came from, some of your architecting and designing with that infrastructure bill?
Well, first I'd like to say thank you for creating a space for us to have this conversation. Thank you for your friendship. We are fellow parishioners of the same church. But all this time, I'm just so thankful for your leadership and your work in procurement, for the people of our country, for the MBDA community. It means a whole lot to have people who care, who are focused, who are driven for the right reasons on this body of work. And you are all of those things. And I'm thankful that you are a part of this community of work. So thank you first.
Well, thank you for giving us the opportunity from a standpoint of, MBDA as an agency. I came to DC area as CEO of KDM and Associates 23 years ago. And the first agency that I worked with was MBDA.
I love it.
So it's a past, present, and future kind of conversation here. No question about it.
I love it. I love it. It feels like we've experienced these in kind of parallels, and yes, because it feels like a lot of past, present, and kind of future for where we are as an agency as well. Like you said, I've been fortunate enough to be a person who's worked on this bill for a really long time, with people who have not, some folks who've transitioned from that work during the time of trying to make it a reality. And it's something special to me to know that it took so many people and so many lines of effort and so much time to make this agency a permanent federal agency. We've talked about this before. You've probably heard me say this before, but MBDA is 55 years old and 3 years young. And it's only because of good champions, good supporters. Some supporters like NMSDC, some supporters like the Congressional Black Caucus, the Congressional Hispanic Caucus, the Asian Pacific Caucus, the Women's Caucus, members from both sides of the aisle who just care about our communities, who've made this opportunity to be a federal agency real. But the truth is, what also made this opportunity real is tragedy. It was only through the pandemic that we were made permanent as a federal agency. And as we as a people know, from great tragedy can be born great opportunity.
Yeah.
And that's
so you're saying that the pandemic really, yes, because of the loss.
That's exactly right.
The decline of business.
The decline of business forced into profile in a lot of ways the need for permanency of MBDA and the architecture, the structure, the infrastructure around a singular federal agency that has existed since the time of Nixon, who founded MBDA 55 years ago. A permanent staple within the architecture of our country to link across all federal agencies, the thing that we know we need as a country, opportunity, right? Opportunities for minority business entrepreneurs in this country to have a fair shot at the American dream of growth and global scaling. And that's the job. The job is to unlock and unleash the full potential of minority business enterprise in this country, to unleash 7.1 trillion of an opportunity gap that has sidelined capital, sidelined opportunity, sidelined a vision for America for generations. So I'm excited by this. I'm excited by the authorities that MBDA now has. I'm excited by the good friends and partners that we've long had as a part of the community of MBDA. But I'm also excited about what we are going to build and what we are building actively as an agency focused on that shared mission.
You know, you have a quote unquote august background that many people don't know, and I didn't know.
My mom would not say it's that august.
Okay, but now listen, chief of staff to the deputy secretary Graves. That's pretty big stuff now. And can you tell us about that a little bit?
No, I would love to. I say like my mom, my parents. My mom's from Kingston, Jamaica. She's a public school teacher, and every time I tell her, like, yeah, I work in the federal government, it's like, okay. And there's always a parallel between, if you know Caribbean parents, do a parallel between their children. It's like, my daughter's a lawyer, and my son works in government. He works in government, something.
That's secondary class citizen.
Don Graves, the Deputy Secretary Graves, he's one of the best people that I've had the opportunities to work with, to work for, to engage with, because we have a shared vision of this country, and it's not predetermined that you and your boss like each other. You and your boss have a shared vision for what you're trying to do, and you and your boss are equally driven towards those ends. And I've been very fortunate to work for someone and work with someone who are all of those things, and who gave me a very wide berth because we share a very similar perspective on the promise of this country. Now, the Department of Commerce is comprised of 13 very disparate agencies, including the Minority Business Development Agency, but through a shared mission of commerce in the United States. Every agency in this country is connected to some avenue of commerce in this country, be it national security interests, be it international interests, be it domestic economic development, be it space commerce. All parts of commerce in the United States. And that's the only place that I would want MBDA to be, in a place that touches everything all at once.
You know, you talk about shared vision. Let's talk about, again, from a federal procurement perspective, what we really pride ourselves in. We have about 17 shared outcome agreements with other centers. And that is so important to me because I'll never forget your predecessor, Secretary Undersecretary Cravens. He sat us around as operators and said, you know, you all need to unite. And it dawned on me and it stuck with me that our clients were better served from Washington, D.C. and all over the country if we're working together and sharing the outcomes, sharing the pathway to create those outcomes. And so anything, this is, little recommendation on anything that the headquarters could do to advance that notion of shared outcome agreements being something we value highly, then I think you're going to see greater outcomes for our MBEs.
I think you hit something right on the head, because the same way he said, I sat everybody down. The day I took this job, he sat me down and said, you know what we really need, Eric? And I've been talking to our equities for a really long time, is to pull them together in a more concerted way. In some ways, it's like it should be under their own weight, but some ways we've got to steward this. We have a responsibility to steward it. It's the same value proposition that we bring to our equities every single day in the work that we're doing. Like, we're better as a collective, we're stronger as a collective. And we have a shared responsibility to them to share these opportunities, share these inroads. And I think that's exactly right. And that's exactly the way we're thinking about it. I value the relationship that we have, you and I have, and I value the relationship we have with all of our equities, because it's truly a partnership. And the value proposition of being in community with one another. I talked about this at the Georgia Business Center and what they're also doing.
Shared outcome agreement with.
Like, we need those. We need, and I say that also with our capital readiness program providers, especially as we have new entrants that are part now of the new constellation of MBDA and what we're growing and what we will become as an agency. We need for all of our entities, all parts of ourselves, to be in unison, in part because what we're trying to do as a federal agency, as an agency, we're trying to connect all parts of the United States federal government.
Yes.
If we can't do that from within ourselves, how can we functionally do that across the entire federal government?
It brings me back to a meeting that we had at headquarters where Miguel was talking about, state home rule rules, right?
Yeah.
So getting into the states can only really happen by those centers in the states.
That's right.
Here in Washington, and we're talking about from a federal perspective, bringing those two together. And I have to admit, it took me a while to, get over the fact that we're the only federal procurement center in the country. But it became, and now with 400 clients, it's all consuming.
Right.
But those shared outcome agreements and working with those centers allow for those clients who are in Houston or Atlanta, wherever, to benefit
and
from our relationships at agencies.
And as you say that, it creates capacity, right? And I think
does.
that's the exact same. So when we talk about MOU partnerships as an agency, we are the newest federal agency in the United States federal government. And the thing that I found out, and I think that you probably knew well before I knew it, is that we are no panacea and you are no panacea. The only way for us to do this work and do it well is to create relationships that are abiding or leverage relationships that we have pre-existing. And through those MOU agreements for our part, but those agreements that you've developed across our existing landscape, it's important, but it's also essential to create that capacity to leverage ourselves in many fold, because we are only one us, right?
Yeah.
But together we can do much more.
I'm excited. This morning we have a Pathway to Billions that I'll be moderating, and when I think about who's on stage. Department of Transportation, Department of Energy, and those MOUs that we signed. And the work that, because those MOUs were signed, really codified our foundation of why and our ability to do what we're doing in a very unique way. Capture management, opportunity identification, then you get down to the proposal writing and all of that. Those elements of trust from a client to going through those pathways is a journey.
Yes.
And unfortunately, it takes a while.
Yes.
Dear friend, God rest his soul, Dan Studevin used to say, and I didn't like it when he said it takes 18 months to get your first contract. Who could stay in business generally around that?
Yes.
So we have these barriers that are even internal to the system itself, that these policies are now working, and we're watching it work. Executive Order 13985 is, I just talked to an agency just yesterday. Our numbers and the expectations from our agency is even that much higher, and it's getting more aggressive. We're driving that at MBDA. We're like the tip of the spear because we're the only federal agency that has responsibility for minority businesses.
That's exactly right. I think you hit it right on the head. The value proposition has shifted in a meaningful way for agencies to coordinate with MBDA. Right? When you have an administration that is concerted towards the same end, it makes the value proposition more in profile to other agency partners. And that's what I hope that you're seeing as you engage other federal agencies that lead on procurement within our network, right? The ability for those agencies to help realize the values and the expectations of that executive order and a number of other elements of other executive orders and mandates that have come, and the growth that we're trying to create for our country. The value, truthfully, in the MOU partnerships that we enjoy, and what we're trying to do here is to make sure that things are just a little bit flatter for folks, right? Like people are spending so much of their time and energy trying to run a business. And it is a daunting thing to put all of yourself into it. And you know this. You know
23 years, 23 years, I do know.
You know this. You know this better than most people know it. And to see the ups and downs of that, and especially trying to make payroll, trying to do all these things. That's something that we've thought about, especially within our within the context of our advisory committee. And some of this is also just to flatten some of the conversations out a bit, right? We have 10 federal agencies. The preponderance of those partners that are sitting on that advisory committee are doing the majority of the federal spend in the federal government. We have GSA on that advisory committee. We have DOD on that advisory committee.
Okay.
We're going to have an announcement a little bit later on about what else, other things we're going to be doing with DOD.
Okay.
But the United States, as you know, is the biggest spender in the United States. So as we think about procurement, as we think about that leveraging opportunity, we also think about the inefficiencies that can sometimes exist and how that can be a binding constraint against a minority business entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And the ability to do business with the government or do business with other folks. There's certain things that just still need to be flattened out and to be made easier for them.
And I would say one of those things are the notion that words matter.
Yes.
So, words lead to brands.
Yes.
So we've defined this whole minority business enterprise and its controversies that have been created by saying small, emerging, and minority-owned businesses. Why do we say that? Because every small business should have the opportunity to be an emerging business that moves to a mid-sized business, that goes to a large business. That is the trajectory. And that is the supply chain that all of our agencies working together are supposed to be
That's exactly right.
producing.
That's exactly
And then when we bring in innovation, we don't have to question diversity.
That's exactly
because innovation is diversity.
That is exactly right.
Innovation creates the creativity and the culture and the difference of where a person comes from that gives the ideas, puts it on the table, and allows for a commercialized product.
That's right. That's why I'm so excited when we talk about an innovation economy.
Yes.
Because that's the bread and butter of what we are doing every single day.
Yeah.
The ability, as minority business owner, as you well know, there are no folks more intrepid, more innovative than folks who are paying more for capital and getting less of it, who are finding ways to making a way out of no way every single day for themselves and the people on the payroll. The other part of this that's always in profile to me is that minority businesses in this country are the ones who are employing a disproportionate amount in their business model of people that look like them. People are of their same experience. And the output for our country is that much greater as a consequence of it. When we think about minority business growth and scaling, we talk about this as a national security issue, as an innovation issue. That's precisely what it is. Because when these businesses succeed, they're pulling up a whole wave of communities with them. And that's the change of our country. That's the innovation of our country. Is in that constellation of folks is going to be the person that creates the new iPhone, creates the next solution to a real big problem that our communities, our country, our world is facing. And we need to make that kind of thinking clearer to everyone.
So we've established that where there's policy, there's profit.
That's right.
And we coined that, by the way.
That's right. Good job.
No, I mean, because if you think about policy is always supported by a budget.
Yes.
And that budget makes opportunity for profitability for a company who can engage. So this is why we tell our clients, you must understand policy. And I go on stage and I say with the crowd, raise your hand if you know what Executive Order 13985 is. And I ask that question, and oftentimes, way too often, it'll be interesting today, how many hands are not raised, right? So you're trying to do government contracting, but you don't understand the policies that were written from the White House to drive your opportunity.
That's exactly right.
So we are moving into the opportunity economy. I'm shifting to the partnership with NMSDC.
Yes.
You got to be excited about that because I am, and I'll tell you why. But
the truth is the partnership with NMSDC is in many ways as old as MBDA. And NMSDC came out of MBDA. And the ability for us to be in community with one another in a more concerted and more intentional way, it's easy for us. It's easy for us because we have a shared value system and a shared perspective on what we need for the minority business community in this country in many ways. We need for them to grow and create wealth for themselves and our communities and our country. It's in many ways that simple.
Let me tell you why. When NMSDC made a conscious decision to focus on government contracting, it created opportunity. Because, we, thanks to the Capital Readiness Program, They're an awardee, and we've provided them year one in their project 12-week online training program for government contracting. They took clients year one who had revenues under 250,000. We brought our clients on. And that was, we learned through the process. We built an online community. That community still exists. They're engaging with one another and teaming with one another, asking questions in the community even after the program is done. We had 400 members in the cohort. Year two, we've been asked to work with their Corporate Plus members. So now you have large businesses or those emerging businesses who are at size, scope, and scale, fixating on government contracting. Look at the teaming opportunities for those smaller businesses. So this is a 360 in motion, right? We just can't get results fast enough. That's probably when I was going to ask you, what's your biggest challenge? What keeps you up at night?
Well, I think you all are actively solving the problem that's keeping me up at night. It is, and I think I said this last night when we were all talking with all of our equity partners together. What keeps me up at night, as you probably know, is the $7.1 trillion opportunity gap. How we close that gap, how we face that challenge collectively. We know empirically that there's a huge government part of solving that gap. We think about $2 trillion of above-base funding available right now within the federal government. That set against that gap is a huge opportunity to close that gap. And what allows me functionally to go to sleep each night is knowing that you and equities like yours, folks like you who are set against this work, are existing so beautifully in this space and are equally focused on that problem set and are putting your shoulders against it and leaning forward.
Well, listen, we talk about a policy that, increased service-disabled veterans from 3% to now 5%. We're just continuing to climb the ladder, Jacob's ladder, by the way. Because, the policy has to catch up with the actualization, not just with the FAR regulations, but the tradition inside that agency, the culture inside that agency.
And we've talked about, I've talked, and this is something that Harvard Business School has talked about, this culture eats strategies for breakfast. The culture part of this is essential, but the culture building that's happening within the federal government is also something like nothing I've seen before. I've spent my entire life as a person who's worked in federal service. And I've seen different things happen during the course of federal administrations. The intentionality of building a coalition of people who are set against this work and look like the values that we're advancing, who are bringing that perspective, is a meaningful change. Having a federal agency like MBDA made permanent to work across the entire federal government. Hopefully that's making your job a little bit easier, because functionally our job is to help compel our agency partners and drive them towards you so that their life, their work can be made a little bit easier. But the culture of people who are in federal service has always, in my mind, been one of people who are at core trying to help folk. And there are no greater and more deserving constellation of folk than people who have been beset by these challenges for a really long time, and who need and deserve, and who are trying not to get a handout from anybody, but just a fair shot, a fair shot at opportunity.
So let's wind down on some what I call good news you could use, simply because I've witnessed over the 4 years agencies, OSBDUs, and mindsets change towards the objectives of these policies that are designed to help us. When they would look at each other and wonder, year one, how is this ever going to get accomplished, right? So what I'd like to, Deputy Undersecretary, close with is the mantra that MBDA as an agency, literally at the tip of the spear, drives opportunity for each agency to achieve these goals and objectives for small, emerging, and minority-owned businesses. And then, as a result, for example, if we go into the Department of energy with 17 national labs.
Yes.
That's a whole nother culture.
That's right.
Okay, within these labs, that if we do our job of connecting entrepreneurship with HBCUs,
Yes.
we now have an innovative workforce
Yes.
that is engaging in the next revolution
That's exactly
of
right.
ideation and science and technology, engineering and math. So our little agency, is it still a little agency?
We like hopefully over a continuous cycles and investment, we will not be such a little agency.
Yeah, we're doing such a major job
Yeah.
with so little. This is a big job.
This is a big job. I think the support that we continue to receive from partners to grow the ability of our team members through continued investment in the work of MBDA, investment in partners like you who are able to scale as well to meet the demand of the space and the time that we are in right now and that we're growing into.
Yeah.
That's going to be essential to the future place of MBDA in our federal ecosystem. I also say that there are efficiencies that we've seen along that way.
Yeah.
Like, we are placed inside a department that touches every area of commerce within the United States. The translation of what our understanding is to the energy models and national labs. We've got national labs that also exist within NIST. Partnerships that we enjoy within NIST allow for us to build capacity, but also allow for us to have a functional base of understanding and grow a level of capacity within ourselves. Would love to have more team members, would love to have a greater staff that would be able to partner more and have greater diffusion so that we could continue to grow that base. Would also love to have more resources that we can continue to invest more in our procurement centers and our specialty centers who are investing in providing technical assistance to folks to make that translation more proximate to them. Because our communities, like every communities, have unique needs and unique ways of understanding. And so much of this is translation. So much of it is translation.
I think you've just, hit the nail on the head relative to why it's so important for agencies like SBA to start increasing the collaboration with MBDA. Because they represent a funding block, they represent a perception and a reality for small businesses. And then if we combine what the mission is with MBDA, you got a lot of capacity building and competency and cultural connection that is undeniable.
As you say that, this is why I'm so thankful to have a good friend and a good partner in this SBA administrator. She sits on our advisory committee now.
Yeah.
So when I think about MBDA, there are some things that, like, you've probably done it. You should be going to the SBA on this.
Yeah.
And we have a partner in SBA who is thoughtful and engaged and active in this space. But there's some points, and I'm so glad that we also have a partner now with the Undersecretary for Treasury, who also sits on our advisory committee.
Yeah.
So you're having some capital challenges, and those capital challenges might be policy related.
Yeah.
We now have a friend in the highest ranking person within our financial system who is interested and focused in on that problem set. But again, it's all about making all of these relationships that we have within the federal government flatter. And making sure that you and other parts of MBDA, other valuable arteries of our agency, feel and know that this is all yours.
Yeah.
This is all yours, and truthfully, it's all of our countries, right? I leave most of my conversations with businesses around the country saying the same thing. Ask MBDA to do hard things for you. Because you're doing a hard thing every single day, running a small business, running a minority business, growing and scaling a business in this country.
Thank God for digitization.
Yes.
And AI and things that are going to now, I say, from digitization in America leads to globalization of our economy internationally.
Yeah.
And so we're happy that we just had, and thank you for continuing to have your MBDA support to our Innovation in Agriculture and Energy Opportunity Zone Summit, this year focused on Africa.
Yes.
And what has opened the doors for that opportunity for all of our MBEs who have a certain size, scope, and scale and readiness, which gets us back to the capacity building training that's so essential, and that's what we want to incorporate next. So, Deputy Undersecretary, we could be here half the day, and then we'd miss all of the really priorities that we have scheduled for. This conversation for me has been amazing.
It's always a pleasure talking to you, my
And
friend.
listen, let's grow together
Yes, sir.
continuously on behalf of our MBE so that they grow.
That's right.
And like I say in the barbershops, there's no me without you.
Same here, friend.
Thank you,
Same.
my friend.
Thank you so much.
All
Thank
right.
you.
This has been Keith Moore and Deputy Undersecretary Eric Morrissette from MBDA, the nation's only focused agency working with small, emerging, and minority-owned businesses. I'm proud to be a part of that, and thank you for sharing some time with us
Thank
today.
you, my friend.